Hey everybody, I had a interesting conversation about abandonment the other night, and it seems to be a pretty common topic. Most of us experience this. Um, so I thought I'd share something about it. I'm just going to preface this with how amazing my mother is. She loves her two kids more than anything, and she would have done anything for them if she would have had the opportunity to, you know, make choices that would have been good for them. But unfortunately, as many divorced parents know, my parents were divorced when I was 3. That's not how that works. You end up with having to make choices for your children that are either one of the choices are good, and you know that they're going to end up being traumatized because of it, but you don't have a choice. And so when I was 6, my mom married a Marine and moved my sister and I to Southern California with him from Northern Michigan. Now, my mom grew up in Northern Michigan, and she hadn't been too far away from where her home was very often. So this trip to Southern California was a brand new experience. And about a month after being there, he left for 9 months. And so what we saw was the person that was supposed to be there leave us. And my mom had to figure all this out. So I can only imagine how frightening that must have been. To have 2 little kids in a foreign, huge environment, brand new, trying to figure that out. But she did. And every summer, she had to put us on a plane, starting at 6 and 4, and send us back to Northern Michigan, because the court said that we had to be with our dad for 9 to 10 weeks. And so she would put us on the plane, and we would go on our own. And I learned right then and there that, we were being left. And she didn't have a choice in that matter, but, as a child, we don't know that, right? So I learned I just have to, I'm a caretaker for my sister now, and she needs my help, so that's what I have to do. And so we were sent back to Northern Michigan, and we were constantly being sent here and there and dropped off, and someone was coming to get us. And so abandonment became a very normal thing, and I learned to protect myself from that by not feeling scared about it or upset about it. And I also learned that, relationships don't involve vulnerability, because if you get attached to someone, then they're going to leave you, and so you don't do that. But I did have a really good relationship with my sister as my sibling, and so I could be emotionally safe with her. We were together all the time. She was the only constant person in my life. So I learned that early on. Well, that was my survival skill as a child. And unfortunately, those things get carried with us into adulthood, and where they don't serve us anymore. And so in my relationships, I was not vulnerable. I was not emotionally available, because that was not safe. And so if I was going to have safety and stability and not be abandoned, I had to make sure that I wasn't going to be emotionally available, because eventually that person was going to leave, and I was going to get hurt. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen. Well, that just sets yourself up for abandonment, because those relationships aren't going to last if you're not emotionally available in romantic relationships. But my emotional availability was always available with one good friend, because I learned that, like with my sibling and my sister, that was where my safety was. So my relationships were separate. Emotional relationships with friends, romantic relationships with partners. But the problem with that is that the friend that I was emotionally involved with abandoned me too, because they would find someone else. Of course, oftentimes they had a partner eventually, and guess who got left behind? I also learned from my relationship with my sister that I was the helper, right? Like, I needed to help. That was what my value was. So I found people whom I perceived needed my help, and oftentimes it was passive people that weren't able to tell me they didn't want my help anymore, or didn't need my help, and just let me help them until they didn't want me to help them anymore, and they abandoned me. So, we experience this abandonment and becomes natural, and we try to prevent it. And in doing so, we recreate it, because that's what trauma does. You recreate it. It was normal. And my protective and survival skills from childhood don't work in adulthood, because I'm not a kid. And that's not how relationships are in adulthood. You're not a child. I don't need to protect myself emotionally as an adult. And so, yeah, I was always afraid of people leaving me, and I was trying to do everything that I could all the time to make sure that they didn't leave. And guess what? They were generally the wrong people that I was trying to keep in my life, because I was unconsciously seeking out people who would eventually abandon me. And that's what kept happening. Now, I've since learned what type of person that is that I thought I had chemistry with, or I thought I was good friends with, and I realized it was just recreation of what was happening before, through a lot of work. But I know that now, and I can prevent that from happening again. But it's hard to see because it seems normal, and it feels comfortable because it's what we know. But the anxiety that goes along with the whole thing every single time, sitting in the back of the mind, is unbearable after a while. So I hope that gives some insight on what a cycle of abandonment can look like, and it doesn't have to continue. With gratitude.